Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to CarrieLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
$14.90 WGCH. This is Carrie Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. If you're wondering what's going on with this motley crew of Republican candidates, who's really ahead on the delegates, and is there any hope? Bix Weir, a regular on the show, is with me now to give you the straight inside scoop on who's really winning. Bix, how are you?
I'm doing well, Carrie. I'm watching our man pile up the delegates.
Yeah, and how exactly is he doing it? Because from what you've said and from what I've read, it looks like he might actually be in the lead.
He is in the lead, and the thing that people don't understand is there's at these caucuses, first there's a popular vote, and then most of the Romney and Santorum and Gingrich crowd goes home after that, and then they get down to the party business of electing a delegate, and the Ron Paul guys are hanging in there and gaining the delegate count by just sticking around and being appointed.
That's incredible, and I'm so shocked that the mainstream media hasn't shared any of this with us.
Well, actually, just a couple days ago, Rachel Maddow did a kind of a special report on it, and it was the first that the mainstream media had talked about it, and it's because the Ron Paul leadership is telling the world this is what they're doing. They don't want any surprises, and it's not illegal. They're just more committed than these other delegates.
Mm-hmm. So it's an enthusiasm. It's as if you have two people you're going out with, and one is gorgeous and just incredible, and the other is brilliant and average looking, and you're really excited about the one that's average looking but brilliant, and you just don't have the heart to break it to the others. Although that's a bad analogy because there's no gorgeous candidates in this race, huh?
I think Ron Paul is pretty good looking, if you ask me.
He's looking better all the time, isn't he?
He is, and I talked about this in an article I wrote, that this is the plan of what I call the good guys, to get Ron Paul in office at the exact time that we need him, because we are on the brink of a financial collapse, and there's no other candidate except Ron Paul who has warned everybody and has a plan to get out of it.
Yeah, and some people think that we could suffer another catastrophic president, of which we've had God knows how many out of the last however many. But really, we're at the end of the road. Somebody has to stop the bleeding or we're kind of finished, right?
This is the last chance for the United States to put their pants back on and get back into the game of liberty and justice and being the country that we were living, the principles that we were founded upon.
So you really think it's our last grasp to survive or maintain greatness? It
is, and there are people working behind the scenes to return us to that type of country. It won't be pretty. They're going to have to crash the monetary system and get rid of all the excess debt out there, and all the electronic and paper, assets, as people call them these days. The funny thing about electronic assets, they haven't been with us all that long. Since probably the early 80s is when everything went on to computers, and everybody laughs about those people who believed in the tulip bubble. Well, what do you think people are going to look back at this time when we believe that little electronic blips had value?
Oh yeah. It's going to be one for the books. That. And that really we're at the end of the merry-go-round here. The motor is grinding up, seizing up, and everybody's going to get thrown from the horses. So they better get ready, right?
Oh, yeah, but it's happened time and time again throughout monetary history that unbacked fiat currencies have collapsed. As a matter of fact, we're living through the longest unbacked currency in the history of the world. And it started in 1971, when we went off the gold standard, and it's been going on through the only reason it was allowed to go on is that computers rig the markets every day to keep everything kind of under control, and they run that out of the Fed New York and out of the Treasury. So, it's lasted a long time without any backing, but now is the time. We've sucked up all the benefits of fiat money, building infrastructure, roads, houses, building our military. Now it's time to crash the system and go back to a more safe and sound monetary system.
And there's really no other alternative, is there?
No, it was interesting. I was listening to somebody on the TV saying that not one country has ever paid off their debt in the history of, it's always a default. Nobody pays off debt, especially in an electronic form these days. It's always a default.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that shouldn't come as a real surprise, because I know Martin Armstrong, he was writing a book about the history of government defaults, and he was only up to around the mid-1500s when the book was already 1,000 pages long. And it's not even like getting close to the 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s where defaults really took off. So there should be some type of law against governmental debt, because it just leads to such ills, and then eventually the party is over and everything blows up, and everyone's shaking their heads saying, oh, we're never going to do this again, we're never going to do it again. And then no sooner do they pick themselves up, dust themselves off, they're doing it again, right?
People by nature don't learn from history, and it's a sad thing. And you got to go through the pain of not being smart enough to recognize the problem beforehand. And Ron Paul has been warning the world about this for since the 70s. And the funny thing is, Ron Paul's been wrong. If you think about it, he's been wrong since the mid 1970s, saying that you cannot live off credit and debt. It's been wrong all the way up to the point when he's right, and the point when he's right is coming, and it's going to be such destruction of a monetary system that it has never been realized by humans on Earth that we had a global reserve currency that was so flimsy as the U.S. dollar, as fiat money in general. But if the U.S. dollar goes, every single unbacked currency will go as well.
Yeah, it seems kind of obvious, and people say, well, the renminbi, that'll be the new reserve currency, but if it ain't backed by something, I just don't see it. So they'll try.
It won't. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, the renminbi, the funny thing is about what's going on with China and the U.S., they know exactly what gold is. They know exactly what unbacked fiat money is. Wen Jiabao, the premier of China, was in charge of their gold mining before he became premier. And his wife is a huge gold bug and gold broker. China knows what gold is and the meaning of gold. So if they try to back their currency, they wouldn't do it. That means, if they have if globalization continues, countries would cash in their renminbi for gold. And so it's impossible to back a currency. When the currency crashes, you have to go back to the organic solution, which is gold and silver coins used as money.
Yeah, I don't see any alternative to it either, and they all know this, but they're all trying to put off the day of reckoning. But eventually, you're going to see reverse Gresham's law, where the good money pushes out the bad, and it's going to happen so fast nobody's going to believe it, will they?
That's exactly it. But I think it'll all be kicked off by what's going on in Europe right now, and it's the derivative problem, the weapon of mass financial destruction, as Warren Buffett called it, that will destroy all electronic and paper wealth. Because there's quadrillions. Some people say there's over a quintillion, whatever that number is, amount of derivatives out there that. J.P. Morgan is the largest derivative holder, and what are they at, 80 trillion derivatives or something completely ridiculous. It doesn't go on their books. One sneeze out of Europe, and the whole derivative complex goes, which means every bank would go as well.
Yeah, well, I think these derivatives they've actually defaulted on them already because they had the Swaps Association, International Swaps Dealers Association, say that that Greece didn't default, that it was a voluntary transaction, and in reality, the default took place and it was over. But
exactly.
But in reality, these swaps aren't going to do anybody any good. They'll have just been giving people a sense of security that, oh, these bonds are good because they're insured by a credit default swap, or the gamblers who just don't own the underlying security and just buy it as a bet, they're all going to get screwed in the end. And that's the amazing part. And I don't think they are considering it or have given it one bit of thought, have they?
No, I think they know exactly what the problem is. As a matter of fact, the swaps clearing organization, or whatever that entity is that decides whether or not a default has occurred, our friend over at J.P. Morgan, Blythe Masters, is now on that board. Can you imagine that? I mean, this is the woman that created the credit default swap, blew it up into the gigantic bubble, went to J.P. Morgan. Now she runs their commodities division. She does all the silver derivatives. I mean, if you're going to put the worst person possibly in charge of deciding who wins and who loses, they put the one, Blythe Masters, in charge of that.
Yeah, talk about the belly of the beast, huh?
That once you go down that path, it is ugly in there.
What's amazing is that they'll stop at nothing to keep this system going a little bit longer. They'll crash companies, they'll crash countries, anything they have to keep the system going, and yet in the final analysis it can't work.
That's exactly where we are, and I see March as it starting off, and probably a European problem that once the ball starts rolling, and you're over the cliff, you just fall until you hit bottom, and I see it happening for 6 months or so, where mass chaos 10 times worse than what happened in 2008.
Probably so. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Ron Paul candidacy. Will he be able to carry this out through the convention, or will we have a brokered convention, which to me is looking more and more likely, and that's the way it used to work in the good old days, before there was a Federal Reserve, before there was an income tax, before Prohibition. If you remember, was it Warren Harding, I believe it was, he got in through a brokered convention. This whole experiment of voting primaries has just been a complete disaster for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I think this time they're doing it on purpose. They don't want anybody to run away with the show. That's why Santorum's, everybody's excited about him. He'll have his 5 minutes in the limelight. But once this monetary crash hits, everybody is going to turn to Ron Paul. Yeah, Republicans, Democrats, Tea Party people, you name it, they're all going to turn to Ron Paul and say, oh my God, you were right, and oh my God, you have an answer for us to get out of this hell.
It's just a question of when.
Watch for it to begin in March.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't like to put it.
That's like 2 weeks away, so get ready.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we're at the middle of February. I forgot all about that. I've been recording so many interviews for the show that I've lost track of all time. It's going to be quite a circus.
You've been doing a great job in spreading the word about financial clarity in a world that the mainstream media does their best to lie, cheat, and steal and keep you in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to lift the veil, the obfuscation, but it continues. But eventually the truth gets out, because you can't lie to people and say there's 8% unemployment when there's 23% unemployment. They know this. They have it figured out. Now, maybe in certain parts of the country that are more prosperous, it's not as obvious. But if you're in Detroit, if you're in St. Louis, if you're in Cleveland, if you're in Cincinnati, if you're in Philadelphia, it's real clear that things are not good, that things are going down, that the economy is contracting, not expanding. But that's for another day, Bix. So we are going to touch base with you. I'm putting you in the calendar for the 3rd week in March, and we're going to do a little post-mortem and see how close we are to the Big Bang.
That sounds great.
All right, man. Hey, it's great to have you on. Just give your website real quick for people who want to find you.
www.roadtoruta.com, or you could just Google Bix Weir and get the 10 million hits of all my stuff that's been plastered all over the world.
We'll talk to you again soon. You be well.
Sounds good, Kerry. Talk to you later.